Welcome to the College Football Review for Week 2. If you love college football and only college football, this is the place for you. We keep it short, we keep it simple, we keep it sweet. Let's go ahead and get into it. Week 2, Oregon and Boise State. All right, I got my notes here. Yes, I am a nerd. I take notes as I watch games because I love it too much, probably. But Oregon and Boise State, the line closed at 18.5 in favor of Oregon. I believe it was 18.5. But this was the game all week. All week. Everyone said just the explanation for Oregon beating the crap out of Boise State, which everyone basically said was going to happen, was Dan Lanning, get right game. They're getting back. It's the get right game. And I was like, no. I predicted Boise State to pull the upset 34-33 with a Dalmas game-winning field goal. Little did I know it was going to be 37-34 Oregon with Atticus Sappington kicking the 25-yard game-winning field goal. But I was correct on basically how this game would play out from the explosive plays. One thing I didn't was the special teams. I touted special teams being in favor of Boise State, which technically kicking the ball it is. But Dalmas did miss a deep 50. But it was 2 for 3 overall. Hard place, Austin Stadium, the deep field goal. Not going to blame him for that. However, I didn't take into account that Boise State could not tackle on special teams and saw one of the worst angles ever. Why do people not realize you run to where he's going to be, not where he is at? Don't run at the guy who's over there while he's full speed sprinting, who's a track star, because by the time you get there, he's 40 yards that way. If you're the long snapper, run directly to the sideline as he is returning back there. And then the tackle, immediately, the first tackle on the punt return for a touchdown, the gunner, he's going down the side, just sticks his left arm out, and that's how he tries to tackle, and then right off of him. Poor tackling, just absolutely poor tackling. Ridiculous, and you have the kickoff return for a touchdown. But by the way, how do we keep dropping footballs when people score? How is that still a thing? Just hold the ball through the end zone. This keeps happening. Hold on to the damn football. But Oregon still got the touchdown for people who said, oh, they shouldn't have scored. At first, I thought the same thing. I was like, that's bullshit. But they recovered it in the end zone, and even if it wasn't going to be his teammate recovering it, they would have gotten the ball back right where the fumble was at basically the inch line, and they would have put it in anyways. But let's go ahead and get deeper into this game. Ashton Jeanty had 192 yards and 3 touchdowns. I said he was going to get his. He got his because Boise State's offensive line, with every good running back comes a good offensive line. That is a true fact. Always. Always. And Boise State's offensive line is a great offensive line. One of the better in the country. That was a bad sentence right there. That's some Southern talk. They're one of the best in the country, in my opinion, because how they play. They're not necessarily the best offensive linemen, but that unit is so solid together. They create holes that are perfect, and I know Oregon's defensive line, I figured Boise State was a great matchup on the offensive line against Oregon's defensive line. I saw some Oregon fans who were upset about their defensive line not being able to get through, and when they were missing some tackles. But, bro, you're playing Ashton Jeanty back there. Let's just be honest. That's the best running back you're going to play all year, best player in college football, except you do have Ohio State where you have Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. But right now, you're not gonna tell me that Ashton Jeanty is not better than both those guys. And it worked perfect. The offensive line for Boise State did its job. So when we go next to the targeting, undisciplined play was a big problem for Boise State in Week 1 against Georgia Southern, and it was a problem when they got the targeting on Dylan Gabriel. It was just Alexander Tubner just made a really split-second decision to hit him when he really shouldn't have, and next thing you know, it results in a 59-yard touchdown to Trayshawn Holden, who basically just split up the middle, and he was gone. And this happened in Week 1 against Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern was in their own territory, I believe, inside their own 20, and there was a roughing the passer, I believe, or just a personal foul, necessarily for something on the quarterback, unnecessary roughness or whatever, and that play got Georgia Southern a first down, and that drive resulted in a touchdown. You can't make plays like that, especially against a team that is that talented and that explosive, and give them 15 yards, because as we saw, you have the 59-yard touch just like that. As quick as a light switch, Oregon can score when they get it right, and they did a few times. I said they were going to have the explosive plays. I keyed it out for Boise State. I was like, you got to limit the explosive plays. To their credit, they kind of did. There were a few times where there was chances, but Dylan Gabriel is so inconsistent on the deep ball. He had Evan Stewart, and I believe Tez Johnson, or was it Trayshawn Holden? I don't know. He had another deep ball. There was 2 deep balls that should have been then caught for Oregon, which could have made the game a lot worse in their favor, but there was also times where if Boise State could have tackled, they would have made the game worse in their favor. This was just a weird game. You can flip a coin, and this game goes either way, but Boise State did enough to win and enough to lose. Oregon did enough to win and enough to lose. It was a great game. It was so much fun, but like I said, you can bash the secondary. I said Maddox Madsen was going to have a game where he steps up and he's not just kind of not really. He's going to have to be the anchor of the offense, because I said Ginty was going to get his, and he kind of got close to what I said he was going to get. I said Maddox needed to make throws to possibly throw some guys open or make throws that he doesn't normally make, which it was 17 for 40, but he kind of did. Like the big 3rd and 9 on your second to last drive before you got the false start that killed the drive after the kick return for the touchdown, which you could kind of feel, which I hate that moment when you're watching a big underdog take on a bigger team, and you can tell when that moment happens where the upset's not going to happen, and that was the kick return touchdown to tie the game. Like, you just knew. And then that false start happens after getting the big 3rd and 9. I think he hit Cam Camper on the outside for that. But the false start killed the next drive, and then it was just the offense kind of stalled out for Boise State. But either way, that was as hard of a game as you're going to play if you're Boise State. You looked great. Good losses are now a thing for teams not named Alabama and Ohio State now that we're in the 12-team playoff era, and G5 gets in. I think Oregon's going to get better over the year. They're still finding their identity. Everyone's doom and gloom on them, but this was a great win for them. I said I wasn't going to bash Oregon if they won this game, no matter how close it was. The only way I said I was going to say anything about Oregon that was bad, really, was if they just got absolutely blown out and there's bigger issues at hand. But you got to be happy if you're a Boise State fan. A lot of them thought they were going to get blown out because the media just kept telling them they were going to get blown out, but they didn't really know anything about Boise State because they don't watch you. They don't care about you because you're not one of the 8 schools that gets them all their views. So they're only going to talk about you if you end up playing one of those schools. And even this, I watched some videos about Boise State. There aren't really any. It's all just Oregon sucks. And they should have squashed this lower-level team better. No one gave Boise State any credit in any videos I've seen, which is wild. But you got to give Oregon credit for this game, too, just like for Boise State. This is one of the better teams you're going to play all year. I know they're in the Big Ten. That Boise State team is better than like half the damn Big Ten. It just bugs me when people discredit teams that deserve to be credited. But that's a conversation for another day. So let's go ahead and get into Oregon. You know, they won how they had to. It's really as simple as that. Good teams win. There's been championship teams that have had struggles. I know for sure the year when we had Cam Newton, our radio guy called us the Cardiac Cats because we just couldn't not win close games. Like, all the time. Everything was close. That's just how it was. There's teams that simply just find a way to win in different ways multiple times. And for Oregon, it was special teams. There's 3 different aspects of football. Offense, defense, and special teams. It's there. Special teams, special plays, special players was for real for Oregon, and it was enough to get them to win. Look, you can criticize. I know the offensive line, there was a lot of rotation, okay? And maybe a little bit too much rotation, not enough time for one to kind of set, but they're still trying to find offensive line. Even Sharon Moore said it at Michigan. They got bigger problems. But it takes time for a good offensive line to mesh. You don't just throw together an offensive line overnight. I get you've given up almost like double the amount of sacks as you had last year, but to be fair, Dylan Gabriel's not Bo Nix. He does not have the elusivity that Bo Nix had, the ability to extend and create plays on plays that possibly could have been sacks. But going back to Gabriel, another thing we can talk about him is he's got to be more consistent. I know the offensive line doesn't help, but like I said, when I was talking about Boise State, he even had those 2 deep balls that were there. And I just don't get how he's not hitting these. It's almost as if he's just not comfortable yet. Like, which kind of goes back to another thing. Play calling. Oregon seems like they're trying too hard to do too much, and then they oversimplify it, like when there was like 1st and 15, I think, and they ran the ball 3 straight times up the middle. They either go too far or they try to condense it too much, and I think that's another thing that's not helping the offensive line or the identity really kind of be able to be formed from the OC. I mean, I could be overthinking that, to be honest, but that's just my opinion. Gabriel was sacked 4 times in the first half. That does have to be cleaned up. Boise State's defensive front isn't necessarily the best, but they're not the worst. Still, that's, like I said, Lanning said he's going to keep shuffling, but I think you got to give him a little bit more time to kind of find that key that you want on the offensive line. But they got a good time to do it. You got 3 games and a bye week before you have Ohio State come to town, which is very important. But you gave up 4 sacks and 7 tackles for loss. That's something you can't ignore. There's times that Dylan Gabriel really just needs to understand that maybe he's moving a little bit too fast, because there's times where he does hold on to it too much. And I think a lot of the identity is going to rest on him getting comfortable for the offense. The defense is fine. Don't get me wrong. You can bash Oregon's defense if you want for this game, but they played one of the better offenses they're going to play all year. You can argue the quarterback position. I'll give you that for other Big Ten teams. But from a perspective of offensive line and running back, that's it. You're not going to find much better, in my opinion. People are going to hate that I said that, but because of power conferences. Jabbar Muhammad, by the way, on defense for Oregon, 6 tackles, half a tackle for loss, 3 passes batted, an incredible one on third down as well. Got to highlight him. He was incredible. But 9 penalties, 74 yards for Oregon as well, 4 of them being holds. Another thing on the offensive line there, it really is. I mean, you got to find the identity, but here's the thing. If Oregon gets it right, I'm not worried about this team at all. With you are so explosive that if things work out correctly, that pass is going to get hit from Gabriel to Evan Stewart most of the time. It was kind of 50-50 in this one, or Trayshawn, or Tez if you get him out there. I mean, this offense has so much potential to just explode. And it's going to happen. Patience pays off. I mean, it really does. Like I said, you have the bye week. Then you have at UCLA and Michigan State before you have Ohio State. People are trying to panic on Oregon. Don't get caught up in it. You do have Dan Lanning. Like I said, people were talking about, oh, Dan Lanning. Give him time. Things don't just happen overnight. Like I said, patience pays off. Oregon's going to be fine. Like I said, when we look at this game, I've kind of rambled on this, but there was just so many thoughts I had in my head about this game. This was a win-win for both teams. Both teams got a win, Boise State lost, but Boise State got a good loss against a should-be playoff opponent in Oregon, regardless of the struggles right now. I think they're going to figure it out. Oregon got a win over a should-be playoff team in Boise State, in my opinion, for the G5. Both teams had weaknesses exposed against an elite talent that they really get to see on film. So if you have trouble with your run defense for Oregon, a defensive line, you get a lot of good film against a team that's very elite at being able to run the ball. For Boise State, I don't really know if necessarily the film will be that great just because you're getting torched on some of these, but you're not going to play guys like Evan Stewart and Trayshawn Holden and Tez Johnson in the Mountain West Conference. No hate to the Mountain West Conference. You're my favorite conference to watch outside of my Auburn Tigers in the SEC, but let's just keep it simple. Those guys are the real deal. And this is a win-win for both teams, like I said. This is great. When we look down the road, I believe when Boise State's fighting for that playoff spot and Oregon's going to be in that 12, we're going to look at this and we're going to be like, look, that team most likely is in the playoff. Oregon has a win over them, 37-34. You look at Boise State, it's like, man, they almost went into Autzen. They almost got that win. They probably should have got that win over Oregon. They didn't, but they've showed they can compete with a team like them. So, win-win for both teams. This might have gone a little bit too long, but Boise State, hell of a game. Oregon, great game. Good teams find ways to win, even if it's not the normal way. All right, let's get to the next one. Texas going to Michigan, where they just mercy slayed Michigan. This game could have been 200-3 if Sark wanted, but he has a heart and decided not to bury Michigan under its own midfield logo. I mean, this was everyone's game of the week. It wasn't mine, but I knew this wasn't going to be close in terms of talent. I did have Texas 27-17 because I thought the Michigan defense would hold up better because I didn't expect 3 turnovers from Michigan's offense and 82 rushing yards overall. Their first drive was 1 minute and 38 seconds. They had 9 plays in the first quarter. For a team that needs to control the clock and play very disciplined football, they just threw all that out the window. They don't have a quarterback. The O-line is a problem. But also the thing is, when you play a team like Texas, who is legit, who's a national championship contender, they'll expose all that up and down the field, and they did. The defense isn't going to be able to be legit if they're on the field for the entire game. It's not possible. But let's talk about Texas real quick. Talk of the town, baby. Texas is legit, man. Quinn Ewers, Heisman caliber quarterback, national championship caliber quarterback. Sark is so much fun with that offense. Most underrated wide receiver room in the country. I've been preaching that since the summer. Ryan Wingo with that awesome run. I don't believe he had a reception, but the 55-yard run, I think it was 55 yards. We got tackled at the 3. As soon as Jarrett Gibson scored that touchdown in the second quarter, game was over. Game was over. There's really not much to say about this game. Texas got to go out there and play backyard football and build up their schedule just by beating the brakes off of you. I mean, it was just a slaying. It was wild to watch. Like, it looked like 2 different levels of football. It was like a varsity scrimmaging the middle school team or something. And I'm not trying to bash Michigan. Like, I don't hate Michigan or anything. I like Michigan. It's just you're worse than I thought you were going to be, and my playoff pick for you now is looking bad because I don't know if you're going to be able to beat teams and overcome a double-digit deficit. There's a lot of problems. It's just Michigan's going to have to try to survive the year. Texas, like I said, they're legit. It's crazy. They did it last year, snapped Alabama's streak. Did it this year, snapped Michigan's streak. I found this stat. It's Texas becomes the first school to beat Michigan and Alabama on the road in consecutive seasons since Notre Dame pulled it off in 1979 and 1980. Like I said, not much to say about this game. Texas took care of business without even blinking, and they're the real deal. Michigan, a lot of question marks and a long season to go. Things can get better, but it's 12-team playoff era, so I could end up being wrong. I had you in my playoff, so it would benefit me to technically be wrong. Let's get to the next game. The nightmare for Notre Dame as Northern Illinois comes in and just beats Notre Dame. Straight up beats them. No ifs, ands, or buts, fluky plays, nothing like that. No, NIU beat Notre Dame from start to finish. Dominated time of possession. Notre Dame didn't even have 300 yards of offense. Northern Illinois outgained Notre Dame by 102 yards. Riley Leonard, I don't know what he was doing. I'm pretty sure he had 2 interceptions on Saturday as well. I mean, they pretty much dictated the pace of the game from start to finish. NIU had almost 10 more minutes time of possession than Notre Dame. But I wrote this on Saturday, and it's kind of funny looking back at it. I wrote, Northern Illinois came in and dominated for what looked to start as a hangover game for Notre Dame. Ended up becoming a fever dream because NIU never even gave Notre Dame the chance to wake up, even with the suspicious refereeing at the end, which was suspicious. Northern Illinois got that first down, and then they reviewed it, and they didn't start the clock when it was supposed to run, in turn saving Notre Dame a timeout for their possession, which they did kick a field goal to try to tie it, but it was like a 60-something yard field goal, and I'm pretty sure it got blocked. But still, suspicious. Either way, NIU just straight up man-to-man won that football game. Very impressive by them. It was NIU's first top 10 upset in program history. They were 0-14 against top 10 opponents before Saturday. Not much to say about that game. Notre Dame just lost a game. Like I said, it was a hangover game that quickly became a fever dream because they realized NIU came to play, and NIU just put their foot on their throat. Notre Dame couldn't do anything. NIU dominated. Shout out to them getting a huge win. Now, Notre Dame is the 12-team playoff era, but your schedule's not as strong as it looked preseason. USC could pan out, but I think you got to go for style points. Here on out, you can't have another game like the one you just had against Northern Illinois, obviously. I think if you lose 2 games with this being one of the games, you might be out. So this was a bad loss. I know it's the 12-team playoff era. This was just not one any of us expected, but it is kind of funny now with Marcus Freeman. Yes, Notre Dame fans, but it is true because he had the Marshall loss too to a Sun Belt team. He can't beat the smaller schools, but he'll beat the ranked teams that Brian Kelly couldn't beat, but Brian Kelly could always beat the teams that he was supposed to beat. So it's just a funny little inverse situation there. However, shout out to NIU. Very incredible win for them. Let's keep it moving. The next game is the game that I was at. Cal Golden Bears coming to face the Auburn Tigers in Jordan-Hare Stadium, where the Cal Bears absolutely bodied my Auburn Tigers. Final score is no indication of what this game was like. Look at the final score and just imagine it says 48-14 or something like that. Cal absolutely destroyed us. They knew they won the game as soon as they went up 14-7. Outside of the first drive for Auburn from Peyton Thorne to the Keandre Lambert-Smith for the touchdown, we didn't do nothing. Cal immediately sliced us up and responded. Mendoza is a beast, by the way. Watching him deal was wild. That first drive, I was like, that dude's good. Man, Cal's offense was operating. It's crazy. They didn't even have 4 starters. They didn't have 2 wide receivers and 2 offensive linemen, and they looked like that, dude. Props to Cal, man. Y'all came ready to play. I mean, they were more physical. They understood their assignments. Auburn didn't look like they were ready to play from coaching to players. It was just abysmal. But either way, not trying to make an excuse because y'all were the better team. So let's get that out of the way quickly. Cal was the better team. They dominated us. Like I said, they weren't threatened by our offense at all. All these Auburn fans coming into the game thinking we're going to win. And for one, I think we were going to go 7-5, pretty close to our over-under. This year it was 7.5, and I was like, we're going to go 7-5 this year. Too many Auburn fans thinking we're somehow going to go 9-3 and 10-2 because everyone believed in Peyton Thorne because we got new wide receivers. Newsflash, everybody, and it finally came to life for all of them to see. Just because you get better receivers doesn't mean your quarterback makes better decisions. It just means good receivers catch the shit throws that they have. And that's pretty much what it is. Peyton Thorne was fully exposed again. Players that play that long in college football normally don't pan out. And when someone continuously gets worse year by year, don't play them. That's a big thing for Auburn, man. I really do hope we make a QB change for someone who's not going to be here next year. Maybe you let the young guys who are going to be here play, like Hank. I would love to see him play. I believe he's going to get some more reps this week. That's a conversation for a different video. But Cal, man, just shut us down. It's really that simple. Like, scoring wasn't too much, anything crazy. But the one guy I really want to point, also, by the way, Cal's won 4 of its last 5 versus SEC opponents. That's crazy. But Lachlan Wilson, Cal's punter, let me make sure I get this right, pinned Auburn, us, on its 2-yard line twice, averaged 54 yards per punt in 2 third-quarter punts. He had 7 punts for 46.5 average and had 4 where he pinned us inside the 20. Cal started 13 drives with an average field position of its own 42-yard line, while Auburn began its 13 drives on an average of its own 21-yard line. Lachlan is a beast. I was in awe watching that dude punt. I mean, that field position battle we never had a chance. Our offense didn't even have an opportunity to spark to life until we got penalties. Penalties are the only reason Cal even had to give up a touchdown to us the next time. Like I said, they weren't worried. When Cal kicked that long field goal when it was 14-7, it was like I think it was a 50-something yard field goal, 53 or something. I was like, why are they kicking? They should just punt and pin us. And then I was like, because I was like, they're giving us the best field position we've had. I was like, they know we're not going to score. Like, they're not threatened at all. They're destroying us up front. They're better than us in all facets of the game. So they said, screw it. We're going to kick the field goal, and if we miss it, we miss it. We're going to get the ball back. Ultimately, I think that was the drive we scored, but there was penalties. And for Auburn fans who were talking about penalties, Cal basically doubled us up on penalties. So spare me with the refs crap. If you want to talk targeting, then we can talk a pass interference against us that took another would-be interception away from Cal. If you're ever talking to someone who's the refs fan, just tell them their team needs to be more disciplined and don't talk to them about football again. I will say, though, the refs were bad for both teams. It was a really bad officiated game. However, that normally doesn't actually decide the outcome of football games. Football's 4 quarters, so don't ever talk to the refs fan. Cal, props to you. Incredible football team. Y'all look great. Especially with the way the ACC looks this year. Y'all could actually make some noise. Quarterback position, you're set. You had players step up in a hostile environment. I mean, I was just mind-blown by how well prepared Cal was. I didn't expect, I thought the game was going to kind of be like 28-24 or something with us winning. But I didn't expect us to blow them out like everyone thought. That was in the Auburn fan base, but a lot of people also aren't realistic and don't realize where we are right now. I'm just amazed. I was really amazed by Cal's performance. The fans were super nice too, by the way. Your fans were awesome. Next game we're going to talk about is South Florida and Alabama. This was actually a really great game. Going into the fourth quarter, it was 14-13, and with 6 minutes and 54 seconds left, it was 21-16 Bama. I'll get into more to that in a second. One thing I really want to point out is USF is a better team than people realize. Especially with Byron Brown. I was very interested. I thought Bama was going to blow them out. I mean, the final score makes it look like a blowout, which Kalen DeBoer was smart because come time in November when people look back at that game or people who didn't really pay attention, they'll see it as 42-16. Smart move right there. Almost covering, I think, at the end of it. It's like 28 points in the last 5 minutes or something. It's pretty funny. However, USF's D-line, incredible job. 6 tackles for loss, 3 sacks. They had a decent amount of pressure outside of that as well, making Milroe very uncomfortable. I know Alabama's offensive line isn't to full strength without Caden Proctor, but I'm not trying to shit on them for that. I'm saying props to USF. Good job there. It was incredible to see the effort, and I think a lot of people got to see how strong USF actually will be, and it's not really like the USF game last year where weather and a lot of stuff played into it and the weird quarterback situation. This was just a team that came prepared and ready to play, and they weren't scared of the moment, and you got to shout out their coach, Golish, I'm correct with his name for that. That's going to be a good program moving forward. He's the right guy to run it, and I liked what he said at the end of the game. There's no moral victories. I get it being a coach, but for them, I thought that was a great showing on a national stage, probably the most viewers they've ever had for one of their football games. Props to them. But like I said, it's 14-13 into the fourth quarter, 21-16 Bama. The one thing I'm always confused with is why schools, when USF is playing Bama, why do these schools always kick field goals when they're playing better teams? I think it was 21-13 when USF kicked the field goal and they made it. I think they were inside the Bama 20s. Like, go for it on fourth down. Try to score. Like, what do you have to lose by losing this game while it's being close? I think he said, like, don't want to go down 2 possessions. I'll have to go look at the film. But, I mean, it's one of those things, like, go for the touchdown, man. You are David Goliath full on here right now, and coaches always do it. Like, you're playing Bama. Just because they haven't broken that crazy play yet, they only need one play to do it, and they did it with Ryan Williams. He's a freaking stud. Ryan Williams is so much fun to watch. Bama, next year, he's going to be crazy once he gets even more built up for college football. The dude is the real deal. Incredible football player. Jam Miller was awesome. Jalen Milroe is my Heisman pick. I mean, he's midseason form besides the fumbles. Obviously, you have the 3 fumbles, which were not ideal for them, but they threw style points on the end, like I said. But I was just, don't let the score fool you. USF, incredible showing. Bama, it can be better, but you got the win. You squished them at the end once they realized it was over. It was smart to get those style points at the end, but I want to give props to USF because they truly deserve it, and Bama, way to not absolutely choke it away, but the penalties were an issue. The turnovers were an issue, just really undisciplined play. I did tell my friends before this game even started, we were talking about Alabama, and I said, talent is still going to be there for Bama, but Bama beating themselves will likely become a thing more often now than it ever was, obviously post-Saban era, because Saban made sure everything was always perfect, and I'm not trying to, like, squash Bama here. This is just one thing that probably will come back to normal, and that's kind of what we saw in the USF game. Like, I was right. There was so many mistakes that you didn't see really in the Saban era, but I'm not trying to hate on Bama. I do think one thing is everyone's talking about the Wisconsin game next week. USF is a better football team than Wisconsin. I think Bama goes up there and just absolutely spanks Wisconsin. It will be interesting. The only way I see this is if Bama is somehow just insanely rattled in Madison, but I don't see Jalen Milroe being insanely rattled. I think he should be able to just have a field day on Wisconsin and put up numbers to help for his Heisman campaign. Man, dude, it could get ugly there. But for Bama fans who get down about it, USF is actually a pretty dang good team. Don't hang your head down from that, and y'all got that great win. I know it's stressful, but I know you're Bama fans, so everything's got to be perfect. But that USF team that you played is a really good football team. Arkansas fans know for sure there is nothing like Arkansas snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, and that is exactly what happened in this Oklahoma State game. Everything I said Arkansas needed to do in my preview video, they did. I said you need to hop out like 14-0 quick and early. That's what teams did last year, and they stalled Ollie Gordon by doing that. And that's exactly what happened. Arkansas went up 14-0 in the first quarter. They held Ollie Gordon to 49 yards on 17 carries. You did it. And the amount of yards you put up. Let me make sure I get this right. I wrote it down because I don't want to get it wrong. Arkansas outgained Oklahoma State 648 yards to 385. But here's the thing. Mistakes. 2 of their 3 field goals were missed. 3 turnovers. You can't do that, okay? Even when you're putting up those insane numbers, an experienced team, like I pointed out with Oklahoma State, I believe I had them winning 42-20, so props to Arkansas for coming back. But I'm not going to make this a super negative segment about Arkansas because I think there's more positive than negative, even though they lost. Like, look, I get it sucks to lose this game. You should have won, like, no doubt about it. But you lost still in the end. However, you played against possibly the future Big 12 champ, a college football playoff team, and you're not at that level yet. They're number 16 in the country. Petrino's working. The offense is working. The problem is, I think, is you start too fast for your own good. You play your best football too early. And I remember telling my dad that. I was like, I bet they start so fast where they just fade out over the rest of the game, kind of talking about conditioning. And Mike Gundy literally said this after the game, after I'd already talked about that. He said, I think we won the game because we were in better condition. I was like, yep. The latter part of the third quarter, fourth quarter, and overtime, when you get tired, the first thing that goes is your mind. Mentally, you don't play well. You make mistakes. That didn't happen. And guess what? Arkansas made those mistakes. I mean, Bowman even alluded to it in his postgame. He said, you don't want to be in those situations, talking about losing. I think we started out slow, but to be able to kind of fight back and battle back and trust in it, it's obviously a great win. They had the experience. They didn't panic at halftime, and they were able to come back and win this game because they had played together forever. I think they have over like 16 returning starters from last year. The most experienced team in the Big 12, that entire conference, is actually insanely experienced. But For the positive for Arkansas, like I said, you took them. The offense looks better. You went to Stillwater, a hostile environment, and did all that. You stopped Ollie Gordon, last year's Doak Walker Award winner. It was just you beat yourselves. But in the end, when you play a really experienced team like Oklahoma State, they're going to take advantage of those mistakes, and you can't be doing that. But we're going to talk about Oklahoma State here for a second. This was huge. This was massive. You avoid the slip-up like you had last year. You saw a team that we haven't really seen Oklahoma State do is win without Ollie Gordon production. Bowman stepped up massive for 326 yards. Presley even had 91 yards receiving and a touchdown. Props to Oklahoma State. Incredible to overcome that. And I want to point this out. Gundy said players were really good about absorbing information, not panicking, not pointing fingers, taking it back out on the field and executing and playing much better. Talking about from halftime. That's what I was saying. That veteran leadership really showed for Oklahoma State. You went through absolute hell, and you came out on top, capitalizing on all the misfortunes of Arkansas, which is what you have to do to win those games. So now let's go to Arkansas. Look, it sucks. You're not a title contender this year. You're not an SEC contender. Your schedule's tough, so it's going to be tough to find more wins, so it would be nice to have this. However, the offense looks like it's rolling. If you can just cut out the mistakes, I know it's easier said than done, but you look good. I am genuinely impressed. Week 1, I know it was Arkansas Pine Bluff, and I was slow down because you could do what we did when everyone in our fan base overreacted. I told them not to about the Alabama A&M game, but y'all came and continued it the next week. We didn't. Y'all look better than we do. There's a lot of games on your schedule now that look a lot more winnable than they did if you don't beat yourself. That offense is legit. Taylon Green was one of the most underrated transfers that just kind of slid through the portal this past year from Boise State going down to Arkansas. And this team is a serious threat to spoil seasons. You are a serious threat to spoil seasons. I think you could possibly make a bowl game. That's not out of the question. I know the schedules are hard, but this is great progress and fast progress on top of a fast-scoring offense and crazy amount of yards. But still, I think if you're an Arkansas fan, do not hang your head over this result. I know it sucks. You should have won. But still, progress is being made, and it's being made fast. And Petrino, as we know, if he is there with the Hogs are hot. And I'm telling you, to keep going, keep building. Don't be too upset about this game. Arkansas, you're in the right spot if you keep going forward with this. I am now terrified to play y'all with the way we looked last week. So, Arkansas fans, great week. Great showing. I know it sucks to lose. Oklahoma State, incredible comeback victory. That is what a veteran team does when it's trying to compete for a conference title. Either way, awesome game that was played on Saturday. Let's talk everybody's favorite team, the Colorado Buffaloes, going to Nebraska and just getting trounced. The score is not indicative of how the game actually went. This was not even close. Matt Rule even came out and said, we expected this score and we expected to be like this. And he's right. The defense for Nebraska is the real deal. It is so veteran-led. There are 7 seniors and 4 juniors on that defense, on a top 13 defense, I believe, last year, and one of the better run defenses, which showed because Colorado couldn't do squat. I believe they had 16 rushing yards overall throughout the game. Shadur was sacked 5 times, and he got hurried 9 times. And they're going to be playing against more defensive fronts like this that everyone was talking about. Ooh, Colorado, week 1, all the Colorado Sunshine Pumpers were trying to find positives from week 1. They only gave up 1 sack, but Shadur was still getting hurried around everywhere. And they were, the offense is so great. That offensive line is not better. It did not get better, even with the additions. The defensive line is not better. There's nothing there except for Travis, Jimmy, and Shadur. But Shadur can't do anything when he's playing better defensive fronts this year with an offensive line that's possibly worse than last year. And that's crazy to even say that, because it's true. That's why when he talked about how many times did Raiola get sacked or hit or whatever, when he had that quote about his offensive line, I'm sure it sucks. You know how good you are, and you're sitting back there just getting dominated. But Nebraska didn't shy from it. I mean, Ty Robinson said that's how we wanted to come out, dominance. We wanted them to feel us. You know Nebraska wanted to make a statement this game, and they did. You had a national spotlight on you, and you beat the brakes off the team that everyone in the media is trying to sunshine pump to get likes and followers from people who aren't even going to probably be watching college football anymore because now Colorado sucks, which everyone knew what this team actually was. 3 great players on a team that is just not realistically competitive. They're like a fun little fairy tale to talk about, and that's really it. There's no substance there. And I don't hate Deion Sanders at all. I actually like Deion Sanders. Travis Hunter is awesome. Shedur's an incredible player. It's more so the media around Colorado than the actual Colorado team, which is annoying. So I don't wish for them to lose. It's just everyone doesn't like you now as the college football whole. I saw this tweet, which was hilarious. I can't find it. A dude tweeted on Saturday night, "It must suck to be a Colorado fan because you sucked and were irrelevant, and now you suck, you're irrelevant, and everyone hates you." And I was like, that's pretty funny. Sorry, Colorado fans, if you're watching this. I know that's brutal, but Nebraska fans, I'm sure, find that hilarious. But this was just complete domination. It's incredible to see Dylan Raiola. Just the composure from this kid is awesome. And I love what he said after the game. He said, "Our defense is the best in the country. I believe that." Listen to this. To top off Raiola, Colorado didn't record a first down until their 5th possession. They had -2 yards in the first quarter. They only finished with 260 yards. And Shedur, for all the highlight throws that he's had through his career with Travis and everything, he only had one pass of 30 or more yards. This was impressive. Nebraska did everything almost right besides the penalties, like I point out. But this is great for Nebraska. You got to talk about how going forward the schedule is built for them to win. I know a lot of people pointed this out, but you could see an undefeated team. I don't want to jinx it, shit, going into that Ohio State game. But still, with the way Penn State looked, I don't want to do that because Penn State does this all the time. There's always that one weird game Penn State does, and then they figure it out. So, but there's a serious possibility this team could be an actual fringe playoff team right now. And how cool would that be to see Dylan Raiola lead that his first year? Let's get to some quick hitters. I want to start with Georgia Tech and Syracuse. Very underrated game on the docket this weekend. Big game for the ACC, actually, with how weak the conference overall has looked so far, except for Cal. Brutal. RIP, my Auburn Tigers. But this was a big game because Georgia Tech made a statement with the win against Florida State, and then you have a good game against Georgia State that you could have been a hangover game, but you didn't allow it to happen in the battle in Atlanta. And then you have Syracuse, who's revitalized, coming in, the schedule's favorable. You get them at home, which Syracuse Carrier Dome, well, I think it's the JMA Wireless Dome. I hate saying that. Feel like I need to scrape my tongue. But listen to this. McCord just became the 3rd ACC quarterback over the past 20 years with consecutive games of 350 passing yards and 4 touchdowns, as he threw for 381 and obviously 4 touchdowns. But the Aronde Gadsden connection is real. Now that Gadsden is healthy, look out, college football. He is the real deal at tight end. Ooh, this Syracuse team is going to be fun to watch, man. And I love their coach so much. Brown is awesome. I love how personal he takes everything. Georgia Tech's coach Brent Key said that his team's matchup against Syracuse wasn't about X's and O's, but more so about being physical. And then Brown says, just listen to this. This is incredible behavior. I love this. I took it personal when I said it wasn't about, or when he said it wasn't about X's and O's. It was about coming up here and being physical and tough for 4 hours. We're from the Northeast. What do you mean by that? We're not physical and tough. Syracuse has been physical forever. I want to make sure that will never be said about us. We're not soft. That bothered me. He said, I want to make sure everyone understands when you play us, just be quiet. Don't give no ammo to me. You give ammo to me, I'm coming at you full tilt. And then he's not lying. This isn't some coach speak after the game, because Fadil Diggs, after the game, one of Syracuse's edge rushers, said that Brown was playing that clip over and over and over at practice throughout the entire week. He said he wanted to get it through our heads, and it looked like we were the more physical team today. He took that personally. That's straight up Michael Jordan right there, and they held Georgia Tech to 112 yards rushing. Syracuse was able to win because they beat them up. It was a close game. It was a tough game. In first year with Brown there, the team looks solid. McCord looks like a leader of that team, and this is a seriously dangerous team in the ACC. Like I said, with how the schedule lines up, it's kind of like how we talked about Nebraska. Don't be surprised if we're looking down the road talking about Syracuse potentially having a chance to be in the ACC title, and then, you know what, if you end up there, you have a chance to be in the college football playoff. This Syracuse team is going to be fun. I love the no-nonsense mentality, the we're going to beat you up mentality that they have. I'm really excited about the direction of Syracuse, and that was a hell of a win, huge win. Let's keep it going. They're not all going to be that long. These are the quick breakdowns. Kansas State survives Tulane in questionable refereeing at the end with a pass interference call and then a pass interference no call. Either way, Kansas State survives. I knew it was going to end up being a close game, and DJ Giddens continues to show why he's a great running back. His 6th consecutive game with over 100 yards. I think he had a receiving touchdown as well, and like 44 yards receiving. But they got to clean it up offensively, 2 for 10 on third downs. But it does kind of suck for Tulane because this was a good moment for them in the G5 playoff race. I think they were picked 3rd to finish in the American. That you lose this game because this would have been great for your resume. But either way, John Sumrall there, and you have a new quarterback after losing Pratt. I think John Sumrall was the biggest under-the-radar hire in this last coaching cycle, and I think he's going to be one of the better coaches in college football in the future. The guy just flat-out wins. What he touches, he wins with, and Tulane got a steal when Fritz left for Houston and getting him. One thing that does suck for Tulane is I don't know how long he's going to be there. Someone's going to scoop him up because he's the real deal. Enjoy while you have him, Tulane. I'm not worried about Tulane. It's one of the most, in the past like 2 or 3 years, one of the most winning, if that's said correctly, programs in college football, and I don't expect that to slow down under Sumrall's watch. Next, Tennessee, North Carolina State. I said the game was going to be 44-10. Close to what it turned out to be. But Tennessee might be the best team in college football, and I don't mean team. I mean team as in chemistry. It looks like the most well-oiled machine in college football right now. I know we're excluding Georgia from this conversation before you get mad, Georgia fans. But this team, defensively, they pop you in the mouth. They double-teamed Pierce a lot throughout this game. 13 tackles for loss Tennessee had against North Carolina State. You can double Pierce. That whole edge room is incredible. The defensive line, the defensive front will mess you up like bad. This defense is legit. The run game is insane. You're not going to find a team, I think, that is less likely to beat themselves than Tennessee. And even as Urban Meyer talked about and some other people have raved about, Nico is the quarterback that they have that if they play complete games like they should, and they will under Heupel, they will be able to beat better teams with the play of Nico elevating them. Because they looked like the best and most cohesive team currently right now in college football. You can say the competition can be better, I know. But right now, they just almost look perfect. Even against lesser competition, that's what great teams do. And I think this Tennessee team might be better than a lot of people thought. I knew they were going to be like good, but I think they could be great this year. And that means they're ahead of schedule in Knoxville. They were already on a good trajectory, but I'm just saying, like, this thing could be chugging along quicker than we think with Heupel. Penn State, Bowling Green. This was your hangover game that Notre Dame didn't have. They almost had a Notre Dame moment. But here's what Penn State did in the second half. You come out in the second half. You only allow a field goal, which was in the final minute. Held Bowling Green to 30 yards rushing, and you had 2 interceptions in the fourth quarter. It was pretty much the first half was kind of like, oh, shoot. Like, how did we end up in this situation? It was kind of like your shit don't stink. You were getting hyped up all last week. Talk of the town with Drew Aller. He's finally looking like we want him to, and this is just one of those moments. Thankfully, I'm pretty sure they have a bye going to this week, which is nice to kind of recollect themselves. I just think it was such a swing of emotions so fast. This is your typical hangover game, but still, hats off to Bowling Green for how that was. Either way, it was just one of those. The better team figures it out in the second half, and they absolutely just squashed Bowling Green. Now, this is one that is awesome, and did you know Army is in a conference? The American Conference. They won their first conference game since 2004 when they were in the CUSA for a stint of a few years back in the day. But this is my favorite part. They had 449 total yards, 405 yards rushing. The quarterback was 1 for 4, but his completion was a 44-yard touchdown pass. And you're like, okay, whatever. They beat FAU 24-7. Just listen to how perfect this is. For someone who loves smash mouth football, Army was leading 17-7 in the third quarter. FAU threw an interception. Army then proceeded to go on a 15-play, 96-yard drive that was 10 minutes and 33 seconds. That is how you squash an opponent. And get this, the way they scored to make it 24-7, essentially a speed option fake field goal that their holder, Matthew Rhodes, ran for a 23-yard touchdown to make it 24-7. Just absolutely beautiful football. And to top it off, they got the ball back with 8 minutes and 44 seconds against FAU when they were still up 24-7, and they killed the rest of the clock. all 8 minutes and 44 seconds. They had 21 first downs and just dominated the time of possession. Army wins the conference game, doing it in the most perfect Army way possible, just controlling the ball forever. And that was awesome to see. Congrats to Army. Virginia snapped their streak of 5 straight games lost to Wake Forest, and they beat them this weekend. San Jose State beat Air Force for a big Mountain West Conference win. I think San Jose State was projected like 10th in the Mountain West, and Air Force was 3rd. So that's a huge game for the Mountain West Conference standings. Massive win. Arizona State beat Mississippi State. Like I said, they almost blew a 30-3 lead, though. But still, you won. You're 2-0 after back-to-back 3-9 seasons. You can't not be happy right now if you're an Arizona State fan. And your running back Cam Scatabo ran for 262 yards. First win over an SEC opponent. Absolutely incredible. Last thing I want to touch on is College Game Day is going to South Carolina and LSU. And I saw a bunch of people complaining about it. Why are you complaining? The same people who are complaining about this are mad if they went to Wisconsin and Bama. They would be like, oh, you go to the same places every time. And then they finally go to a place they haven't been to in a decade. They're like, oh, why are you going there? That is it for week 2 of the college football review. Hope you enjoyed it. I think I'm going to keep this style of content going forward of me just being able to walk around, be a little bit expressive. I'm better than doing that than trying to pretend to be professional and just sitting at my seat. I don't like sitting down for more than like 10 minutes unless it's at a football game. So I'll probably keep this style moving forward. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Enjoy week 3 coming up. I have more content planned as well. Got a little bit better of a content schedule kind of figured out in here. So hope you'll have a great rest of your week and get ready for week 3. A lot of y'all are going to be disappointed when your team loses, and a lot of you are going to be happy when your team wins. Come here to see me talk about it.